Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome. My name is Katie Gideon. I will be the on camera facilitator. I'm dialing in from Edinburgh, Scotland. It's gotten definitely a little bit chillier, so fall is officially here. But we are so glad that you are joining us. As just a quick reminder, I will be the only one on camera. And so that means you guys get to get comfy. So make sure you have your October journal, whatever pens, pencils, sticky notes, anything that you want. Grab that last bit of coffee or tea. Get comfy because we're going to be spending the next hour together setting up our week 2 of October. But I also want to give a huge shout out to my co-facilitator who is dialing in from Colorado, Maya, who will be in the chat. We actually did this yesterday for the Saturday social, but in swapped roles. So it's always fun to spend a weekend doing a setup with Miss Maya. But I love seeing all of the names in the chat of our returning socialers. It is so great to be able to spend a Sunday with some of my Sonder fam as we become the best accountability buddies for the rest of the week. But we would love to see if this is your first social. You can throw it in the chat. If you want to share with everyone, make sure that chat is set to everyone. If it is set to just hosts and panelists, that comes to just myself and Maya. But if this is your first social, or maybe your first setup social, or maybe even just you hadn't been to one in a while, and we are glad that you're just here kind of coming back to it or revisiting it. Awesome. Already seeing Amanda and Marie with the first setups. So great. Welcome. You are in great hands with our Sonder fam in the chat. But as always, it can get a little bit maybe sensory overload with the setups, and that's just because the chat can be going pretty quickly, especially since we have over 100 people in attendance. The music can be too much, so maybe you can mute that. I can be too much, you can mute me. Trying to work on your journal can be a bit too much, so maybe it's just taking notes, or maybe it's turning everything off and just kind of diving into your journal. But there is no right or wrong way to journal, and there is no right or wrong way to attend the social. We are just glad that you have come exactly as you are, and we hope that you get what you need out of this. So sometimes it's asking yourself, what do you need? Do you need to focus on the setup? Do you want to focus on the chat? Do you want to just sit and hang out and color on the coloring page? There are no rules or requirements here. No one is going to come over your shoulder to look to see what progress you made. We're just glad that you've set aside this time to focus on what you need to not only kick off the start of your Sunday, but also the start of the next week. So, as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. You can definitely throw them into the chat because we always appreciate it. We are a big, pro sticker family here. Stickers want to be used, so utilize them. No more sticker hoarding. So we do talk about those a bit often. And then while Maya and I have some information when it comes to Silk and Sonder, we do not have any specifics around individual accounts or any accounting. But with some of the newer products, you can certainly throw those into the chat. We had a really great discussion yesterday. Maya brought up kind of her usage of the AI beta coach, which is really awesome. So we love to always have that type of conversation in the chat as well. But if it's anything more specific, we will probably have you reach out to hello@silkandsonder.com. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So if you had a week, we are glad that you're here. But it also means, especially when we work on the mind map or even the rosebud thorn reflections, they can get a little tricky, a little tough, a little hit a little bit more in the emotions that you weren't expecting. And that's okay. But if you need to set up some of those boundaries or barriers of I'm just not ready to look at this today, I don't want to look at it tomorrow, I don't want to look at it this week, you can do that. You can certainly just write it down and come back to it when you either in a little bit more of a headspace or wanting to take the time to do it. But as we said, there are no requirements to have anything done when you log out of here other than you have spent this hour on what you need. So we are still embracing the amazingly alliteration of the theme for the month of October, which is opportunity. And so I am a big fan of the themes that have that kind of movement or action built into it, kind of that feeling of opportunity. I feel like is one of those that in order to truly grasp the meaning of it, there has to be some sort of action item to it. So I appreciate the quote on the left, which is the search for opportunity doesn't stop. It's there in front of you all the time. I do like that kind of idea of choose your own adventure, choose your own idea, and you can kind of embrace even the small opportunity of, what am I going to do today? What am I going to read today? What am I going to eat today? Those become kind of fun little opportunities. But I am also in that mode as it gets a little colder outside, a little bit darker, of to counter those movements is you have to have rest. So I also found this other quote, which is enjoy the space between where you are and where you're going, which I feel like a lot of those were driving to some sort of opportunity, some sort of goal. Embracing something like that always, again, requires a doing or an action. But you can't just keep acting and you can't just keep doing. You need to maybe sit and have a big, either a rest or a refresh, or even just not necessarily a physical rest, but we have those 7 different types of rest. So maybe it's the mental rest, the emotional rest, but also sitting back and enjoying and almost marinating in that idea of the opportunity you just accomplished before trying to come up with the next thing. And I feel like, to me, that's a great reminder. I know Maya brought it up yesterday with that kind of having to just maybe enjoy some of the presents as we move into some of those the Burr months, which become the holidays. And so enjoying the space between where you are and where you're going, give you that chance to almost have that inhale and then the exhale before you almost have to do the inhale again to do the next thing. So that's something that I'm going to try to be certainly mindful of this week and next, with just that kind of refresh and enjoy before I pick up the, tie the running shoes to move on to that next opportunity. And so with that, we're then going to move into our agenda for the social. So we'll be working on week 2 of the opportunity mind map, the rosebud thorn reflection, and then those weekly setup pages. So if you have not joined us before, the monthly mind map is something that is unique to the weekly setups. It is not printed in your journal, so you're going to want to find a blank notes page. And because we are already on week 2, some folks have already set up their weekly mind map. So there's going to be 4 different weeks where we dive a little bit deeper into the month's theme. So you'll find that blank page, block it up into 4 different squares or 4 different areas that you then want to jot down. Or maybe this is in a scratch page section or another repurposed section of the weekly pages. But we are going to work on the quote. There is a little bit of a spoiler because week 1 we talked about education, and so week 2 we're going to work on professional development. And so we always include the previous week, so if you missed one of those weeks, don't worry, you can include it here. Or maybe you just want to focus on one of the particular weeks. You don't have to kind of dive into any of these if you're not really feeling in it, because you do have the whole week to explore this idea. So for personal development, which is week 2, we want to think about a skill or a habit you want to develop that you haven't had the time or space to focus on yet. What does achieving this goal look like for you? Why is it important? And how would it contribute to your overall sense of growth and fulfillment? I feel like we've done kind of versions of these in the mind map in the past, but I think it's a great time to start focusing in on how you can kind of set aside some time for this type of personal development opportunities. And so the first part of the questions listed here, as well as some kind of other versions to approach this, are listed there. And the best advice I got from someone is that there are 24 hours in a day. How you choose to prioritize and set aside time for can absolutely be within your control. But again, as we move into some of those busier times, those 24 hours no longer become your own. But now would be an opportunity to start setting up some of those habits or tasks or goals that you can set aside some of that time to focus on that kind of personal development, be it set aside more time for a hobby, some sort of personal growth. But at the same time, not only can this be that actionable item, but it can also be an opportunity to reflect on maybe some of the personal growth that you've already made in a particular area. I love the idea of celebrating how we've gotten here, especially if you've had to kind of go through a couple different routes, a couple different detours, even, some backtracking or even some new terrain. But being able to celebrate maybe a personal growth that you've made in a particular area that you're genuinely proud of because you either took an opportunity or you built your own opportunity. And then, as always, when it comes to personal development, I feel like you have the internal factors as well as those external factors. So, if there's a personal development goal that you're really focusing on, does it require support? Or does setting boundaries needed for that, or maybe some other external factor, or is there something internally holding you back? That's kind of what I love about the maybe questioning attitude of opportunities. Is it an opportunity because of you, or is it an opportunity because of your circumstances? So I feel like that's always an interesting duality to explore. For me in particular, when it came to a personal goal of mine, I grew up playing piano. And after listening to all these instrumentals, especially with the socials, I miss being able to play the piano. I don't have a piano with me, so I miss that a little bit more. So now I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of bring that back into my life. I inherited my grandmother's piano, which is at my parents' house. Don't exactly travel or move around with a piano, but already knowing that when I go back to visit, I definitely want to maximize the time to do that. So that's where it's more of how can I set aside time to do that? How can I continue to set aside time to do that? Because I realize that not only is it something that I enjoy, but it's also a skill that I certainly don't want to use. Um, and so we'll give you guys some time to work on this. I would love to hear if you are working on, again, setting aside more time for a hobby or something that you want to work on, and how you can kind of embrace that opportunity. So we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I love the kind of almost specifically open-ended part of these type of questions. But I feel like an example of when I said, coming to these socials, you may need to set up certain mental barriers. I have still been very much in my head this last week. So that was another kind of personal development note. If you kind of scroll a little bit further down in what I wrote, is that yeah, there are definitely hobbies and those type of things that I want to set aside some more too, but also on the like personal development front is, addressing something as existential fears that keep me up at night. So I know I'm still very much a work in progress there, but I feel like it's also that ability to kind of maybe loosely acknowledge and kind of maybe poke and prod a little bit in that direction, but knowing that I'm not quite ready to dive headfirst into what those opportunities will look like. So being able to kind of pivot within the question and realize that there are certain hobbies or areas that I definitely want to set aside more time to. But the realistic is that, and I definitely want to make time for hobbies and activities, but I also know that I've still got some emotional headspace to kind of sort through as we go through. So that's why, again, I really enjoy the mind maps of that kind of open duality, but not always having to address it right away. Being able to kind of push it at least in a direction when you can kind of tackle it, but also asking the questions then and knowing that they can always be there so you can always come back and revisit, especially when it suits you for these type of prompts. So thank you everybody for sharing. So now we're going to move into that rosebud thorn exercise, which is on page 36 in your October journal. And so this gives you an opportunity to look at your past week and realize that it is certainly a roller coaster, but also being able to acknowledge the rose, which is a highlight, a win, something that went well, something that made you happy, something that made you smile, and also look for some of those buds, which is really embracing that emerging opportunity. I feel like sometimes the buds can be a little bit of throwaway answers in this type of reflection. So being able for it to kind of have its own little spotlight moment with the theme being opportunities. So maybe focusing a little bit more on those buds that you can certainly cultivate in either to a rose or even kind of bracing for it if it turns into a thorn. And then the thorn would be the something that's not great, a challenge, something that was a bit of a roadblock, stumbling block, or something that's taken up a little too much time, energy, or space in your brain is kind of how I've looked at it. And I feel like it's a good litmus test for what kind of headspace you're in as you head into the next week. Are you able to find a rose pretty quickly? Were you only fixated on the horns? So it gives you an opportunity to look at all of those. And so for me, the rose this week, I went to a stand-up comedy show with a couple friends of mine from my drama class. So one, I get to hang out with other people. So I feel like I've officially found some friends in Edinburgh after moving here. So success. It's always hard to find them once you reach a certain age, I feel like it. But it was a really fun show. It was entertaining. I would say stand-up comedy is not usually my vibe, but it was a fun little kind of excursion on a school day, so to speak. But an emerging opportunity, I got pulled in for a business development component to growth for my current work. And my boss kind of fully handed it over to me because recognizing that I had that sort of expertise and analysis behind it, which I appreciated. That was not something that was always granted to me in my previous position. So I was thrilled that I am now kind of the subject matter expert in our group and was given the kind of full you run the meeting, you answer the questions, you all do all the things. I'm just going to sit here because I got invited to the meeting too. So I appreciated that. Thorn, I think it's just because it's cold and as you get older, it just doesn't work as well. But I pulled something in the back of my leg, definitely my hamstring. Don't know if it was from like one of my drama classes from tennis or just getting up and pivoting weird. But it's been a little naggy, especially in the cold weather. So having to refocus on some of the stretches there, but certainly makes constant reminder that I am not as young as I used to be. But I would love to hear about some of your roses to celebrate those wins with you for this week. Get excited with you for those bud opportunities, but as well as provide that extra love, support, and thoughts when it comes to some of those thorns. So I will stop talking. And again, we are on page 36 and we are reflecting on our past week through the lens of rose, buds, and thorns. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I do love the exercise of rosebud thorns. I also love reading it in the chat to just kind of not be alone in experiencing the kind of highs and the lows and everything in between of each week. So that's what I think is really special about the socials is just being able to put some of those things out into the universe for those type of things, and just realizing that there's probably someone out there having at least a similar struggle or a similar journey, or maybe they're on the end of that journey. So it always helps against so that feeling of community, especially as we start moving into some of those winter months. But as I said, one of my biggest thrills with these socials is being able to celebrate those wins and those roses, being able to get excited about the buds, and then sending the extra love and support on those thorns for, be it the natural disasters that we've been dealing with, the loss of a pet, the loss of family on those medical journeys, and all of those things. So being able to just kind of, I feel like it adds a little bit of a weight off of you just to be able to throw it out there, especially in a wonderful community like this. So with that being said, we're going to now move into the weekly planner pages. So these are going to be on page 40 and 41 in your journal, and we're going to start with those particular sections. But as always, there are definitely different ways to approach these pages. Sometimes you need exactly what is written, and sometimes you want to repurpose or try something different, or sometimes you just want to take a break from that particular section. But it's more of the helpful reminder that there is no right or wrong way to a Silken Sonder. If you get a little overwhelmed or a little tough to kind of work through what you want to do, what you want to maybe change or not change, you have the ability to ask yourself, what do you need this week, and how you can work through it. But you can always do the same thing that you did the previous week. That's kind of what is magical about the start, stop, and continue component. But at the same time, just because you write it down here, it may look different in 2 to 3 days, because as we know, life happens. So being able to make changes or adjustments, or admitting that maybe that was not the best way to do something, and being able to start anew each week. But you have the ability to make those changes. We are breaking up with perfection. So if you have to start over, if you want to try something new, or if you just want to keep on keeping on in that same path, it always focuses on what you need. So we're going to start at the top of page 40 with this week I want to feel. The way I approach this is I ask myself, how do I want to feel this time next week? Because I am very much a goal-oriented person. So as I am experiencing the rose and the buds and the thorns of the week, it gives me a either kind of guiding light or a back to center, how I can kind of come back to equilibrium or keep that even keel, for all the other nuances there. And what I love about this particular section is if you start throwing in the chat if you want how you want to feel this time next week. I feel like it's that intentional optimism that I love. But maybe it's a specific word, maybe it's your word of the year, maybe it's a word of the month, maybe it's the same word that you did last week, just because you feel really that it resonates with you and you're able to continue with it. Maybe it's not really a word at all. Maybe you just want to feel 1% better. Maybe you want to feel more something or less something. Maybe you want to include a quote or a sticker. The stickers are fantastic for these. Maybe you just kind of want to embrace the upcoming holidays. And so for me, particularly this week, it's a little bit more present. I definitely need to get out of my head and focus a little bit more on even just the simple things of the day-to-day tasks. But I definitely want to be a bit more present. But I'm going to do a quick song, and we will like I said, focus on how you want to feel this time next week, and we'll thank you everybody for sharing. Like I said, it always makes me happy to see all the ways you want to feel this week, kind of what is the end goal for this week. And so now we're going to kind of embrace those ideas. And now we can build in the following sections, which I'm going to put together, but we're still on page 40. But the first one we're going to talk about is those weekly major 3 goals. Maybe they are the weekly minor goals. Maybe they're just weekly 3 goals. Maybe they're just 3 things, maybe less goals. So you have, as don't let the title kind of make you nervous, or you can fully embrace that these are the 3 things that you want to do. And so there are a couple ways to approach this. Maybe it's the 3 different categories. Maybe it's a me category, a home category, a work. Maybe it is just the 3 things. For me, this becomes my mental and emotional reminders to get through the week. And sometimes it is something like that, or maybe it's a professional goal, mind, body goal. Or we, again, like those alliterations, the productive, peaceful, powerful, frog, fun, and fierce. You will also see those amazing bingo boards as a way to incorporate it there. Or you can do that kind of direct tie to the weekly to-dos. So the weekly to-dos that you have listed, either in a bingo board fashion or a category, they directly support those either categorized goals or those different theme goals. So you can do it that way, or maybe you want to focus on have an early goal in the morning, midday, or an afternoon goal, kind of breaking it up into times of day. Same thing with maybe this is actually really where you just put your self-care or some of your routines. Maybe these are stop goals. Or again, the learn, leap into, or let go. You can kind of embrace some of those, or those are just those helpful reminders. I would say for me, the weekly goals don't change too much because they're, again, more of those mental and emotional reminders to get me through the week so that I can accomplish my to-do list, so that I can feel the way I want to feel this time next week. And then the other kind of ideas for these are maybe these are the repurpose for weekly affirmations. As you can see, the one in the top right completely switched it. Their weekly to-dos go better with the graph outline instead of the blank page, but still being able to kind of connect each of those, or maybe you have a specific task that you want to do and there are different parts of those things. So you can certainly build this out to whatever you want in order to combine those goals and the to-do lists. Which then brings us right directly across that page to the weekly to-dos. And so maybe these are a to-do list, or maybe it's a to-do list. Either way, it's a to-done list. And so maybe you have it in the form of a bingo. For me, this particular section based on my to-do list does change on a pretty regular basis. One, because the to-do list changes, but I've also realized that a couple times I've carried over too many of my to-dos, so they become less to-dos and more of a prioritization help. So I definitely utilize that Eisenhower matrix with the do, decide, delegate, and delete. That will certainly help with the prioritization of what I need to get done that week. Or maybe it's another different way of prioritizing with the needs and the wants of your to-do lists. Maybe it's also just recategorizing those into a call, errands, follow-up, or schedule, some more gamification, but maybe this is more of those mental and emotional reminders of your weekly to-bes. I noticed that someone had a little bit of a hard time finding a rose, so maybe this is where you track the happy thoughts. I also like the idea of don't do this, but do this instead. And same thing with being able to break it up into a couple different categories. Maybe it's a work need, a personal need, a work want, a personal want, or even turning them into aha moments, kind of exploring some of those opportunities, or even kind of a place to track either some of those weekly wins or the glimmers, or even a not to-do list, especially if you're wanting to kind of focus and be present. Maybe that's something to embrace. So I'm going to give you guys some time to work on the weekly major 3 goals and the weekly to-dos, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved seeing how you categorize your different goals, but also how you kind of connect those to your to-do lists. So hopefully you are either continuing with kind of the momentum that you've used in the past couple of weeks to kind of accomplish those things, or maybe you just needed to kind of switch it up a little bit. But we are still going to stay on page 40 with those habit and activity tracker. This is at the bottom of the page. And what is, I think, at least unique in the way that I approach the habit and activity for the weekly versus the habity and the habity. We'll say it exactly like Maya intended. The habities, because you say it too fast. The habities monthly tracker is that those are things that you want to do every single day, but I carry them over into my weekly with the reality lens. So maybe that's weather dependent, it is workload dependent, all of those things. So it's more of, I found I wasn't quite reaching my goals with the habits and activities because I wasn't setting myself up for success. Because again, everyone has those same 24 hours in the day, and there are weeks where I have more control over those 24 hours than other weeks. And so I was getting really frustrated. So that's why I included the lens of reality with the habit and activity tracker. And so maybe these are habits and activities you want to stop. You can set goals for these. One of those kind of nice methods is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you want to do something 5 times, 4 times, 3 times, 2 times, or maybe you don't want to set a goal. Maybe you just want to have those listed. Maybe these are less of the like tangible things to do and more of the reminders. So be kind to yourself, acceptance of yourself, get enough sleep, listen to upbeat music. Maybe you are on vacation or you're wanting to be a little bit more present, and so you don't want to track any of these or you need a break. That's where all of those fun stickers could go. And just because there are 5 lines does not mean you need to have 5 habities to track. Maybe it's just 2 or 3, maybe it's just 1 because you're coming off in an illness and you just want to get better. But I also like the way that you can break this down into maybe your traditional work week. Days look a little bit different than your weekends, so that can impact what habits and activities you can accomplish on those different days. Or what I think has also become a big trend is you can utilize some of these lines to help connect your reminders to your journal. All of these are tools in your tool belt to use it. So why not give yourself a friendly reminder to check in on your monthly intentions, to check on your maybe monthly habit tracker, maybe your expense tracker. Maybe it is work on a prompt in the journal portion. Maybe it's work on the coloring page. Maybe it is check in with your to-do list. So being able to kind of write these down is a little bit of that friendly reminder. I mean, that's exactly what it can be used for. So maybe it's less of the actual tangible thing, but more of the guide to make sure that you are connecting all of those pieces in the journal as much as you would like when it comes to kind of that tool in your tool belt. I'm a big iconography fan. I love the visualization here, and I always recommend maybe trying something new or fun each week. So here are some of those great suggestions. Same thing that kind of goes with the bingo board. Maybe one of your line items is to do one of your bingo board activities, but I like the idea of the fall slow living reminders, how to romanticize autumn. I'm also a big fan on the sustainability front. The October produce that are coming into fashion. So if you want to try again, kind of fall October recipe, here's some of the produce to do in that realm. And then also the fun October to-do list from Positively Present. Great question, Kate, is how many tips to struggle to use the journal every day? I feel like there are definitely weeks where I dive right in because I've kind of mapped myself way to do it. But at the same time, here's kind of a section that I've started to utilize a little bit more with some of those reminders when I'm just a little bit slower on each of those things. But it becomes, it takes a while to do that. That's really the reality of it. It probably took me about 6 months to a year after doing this to really settle into what I wanted, what I needed. But it's also just maybe sometimes you need a break from a particular section or a break from a particular page. Maybe that's the relax and refresh component. But I think it definitely becomes how can you set aside time to do it when you have time to do it and thinking of all those things. But there are definitely, if you want to continue that conversation in the chat, we would love to hear it. But I'm going to give you some time to work on this, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for sharing and appreciate all of the advice, especially around how to kind of turn this into a habit because like, yeah, someone said it is definitely building a relationship and figuring out how what's going to work. So it's certainly at least take the opportunity to try it and keep kind of making adjustments as you go. But remember, there are times to take a deep breath. There are times to go back to the drawing board. And at the end of the day, we are breaking away from perfection. And a good thing to always start with is what do you need and how can it help you? We're now going to flip over to page 41, the B side, as I call it. And that's because, again, I'm a big music person. So while these have some amazing gems, it's not something that I always utilize or listen to on a regular basis. And again, that took me probably 2 years to kind of come to that conclusion because I was really just beating myself up for either just like partially doing them or not doing it enough and realizing that that was not really something that I needed on a regular basis. So the meal plan, you can absolutely use it as a meal plan. You can use it as a food tracker, either in real time or planning purposes. Some of the other kind of repurposing ideas is a one good thing. So maybe these are your roses for the day. Maybe this is where your to-do list lives with some of those meetings and requirements. The meal plan for the soul is becoming, I think, certainly popular with kind of the journal prompts that you can put there. You can dive into with the theme. So one of the themes a while ago was trust, but it's you can turn that into opportunity. So you can kind of embrace and celebrate those opportunities each day. Because while opportunities can be big, a lot of times they are just kind of the smaller magical moments within the ordinary days. Maybe it's the priorities, maybe it's doing something that filled your cup instead of the literal tracking of the water droplets. Great place to put the affirmations. This can also maybe be a clothing or a wardrobe packer if you're going on a trip. Again, maybe it's the happy thoughts, the word of the day that you either want to focus on or journal on, or even the creative haikus that someone did a different haiku each day. Then hand in hand with that is the kind of mind body health plan, which again can be something that you can either schedule in advance or something that you can kind of track in real time. So maybe this is where those alliterations are. I love the idea of asking yourself what you feel. So this is what you then need, and you can do that at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. So if these are the feelings that you have, here's what you kind of need to do to either embrace it or help it or change it. Maybe these are reminders to unplug. Again, maybe a highlight of the day, maybe focusing here on the 7 types of rest. You have a different to-do list, a reading log. How did you care for yourself today? Maybe this is where your routines are. And then again, some more fun visuals of self-care goals. Maybe you want to focus on things for self-care tips. Or maybe you just want to put a big old a fall sticker there because that's the particular section you don't want to work on. Maybe it is just a quote or an affirmation. And then the shopping list can again go hand in hand with that meal planner or the tracker there. So you can use it as a shopping list, but I do know quite a few folks, this is where their bingo boards live. And you can certainly turn it into some sort of theme. Maybe it's a boring stuff bingo, a celebrate the wins bingo just for fun, a fall bingo, an October bingo, a birthday bingo, or maybe self-care reminders. I like the idea for mini breaks at work, kind of incorporating that. Again, maybe this is a to-be list. Again, maybe it's a social check-in, check on with those friends and families, especially as we move into the fall and winter times. And again, maybe it's a shopping list for the don't buy and buy, or a holiday prep planner as we move into that kind of direction. Maybe it's a focus on weekend habits. Maybe it's just a note to self because you're just feeling the way you're feeling and just need a little friendly reminder, or something more day to day, or even just quotes, prayer lists, all of those things. So I'm going to give you some time to finish up on this page, and we will see you soon for the closing. thank you everybody for sharing. And then you have the very, very last section at the bottom of page 41, which is the I'm loving, which is the opportunity to just kind of throw out with no rhyme or reason what is making you happy, what you're loving that particular week. So I always like the fun quotes here, especially when it comes to kind of the motivation there. So I'm loving. I went on a deep dive. I feel like music was the theme this week, so I thought it was really interesting with how music affects your mood, because that's how I kind of consider some of the playlists that I put together. So I always like to do that. And then also we did kind of skip over page 39, but I love this page. It's a really magical snapshot check-in. I like doing it at the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, and the end of the month, because there are 3 lines. But it's another one of those just kind of fun brain dump style check-ins. So I highly recommend taking a look at it, because you can kind of celebrate what you're loving, feeling, enjoying, anticipating, wishing, reading, watching, and planning. And it really makes a good kind of beginning, middle, and end to your story of that particular month. But with that being said, we love sharing and spending this time with you. We would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. You guys provide such amazing inspiration, especially within these socials. That's where we get the amazing examples that you provide there. So if you want to, we would love to see your weekly pages there. And then as always, Maya is going to start putting into the chat the links to the refer a friend, the upgrade information, as well as the YouTube link if you miss a social or show up late, or just need to kind of think about it and come back to it and review, get other facilitators' takes and opinions. And then as always, the survey. We love to hear what you have to say, especially around kind of anything Silk and Sonder related. Maybe it's the journal, maybe it's the socials, maybe it's that new coaching system. We want to hear the feedback, we want to read it, and we appreciate that. This is my playlist. I will provide the Spotify link into the chat because I love doing that. So this is the snapshot of that. But as always, we appreciate that you spent your time on a Sunday with us, and we can't wait to see you at a future event. But you guys are going to have an amazing rest of your day and an amazing week, and we can't wait to continue to explore October with each and every one of you. Have a great day. Bye.
Walking through the heavy light, the streets are empty and you don't feel right. You didn't want to let yourself down, so don't be scared to get out. Here's 1,000 voices saying the time is now. So let go, you're